October 2002, the first episode of Naruto aired in Japan. It wasn't long until Japanese developers saw the potential and success of this show and started making Naruto video games. In this series, we look forward to exploring the complete history of Naruto games, as well as their evolution. Two publishers got a hold of the Naruto license, Bandai and Tomy, and for 8 years they competed with each other, launching Naruto games at the same time or very close to each other. This war lasted from 2003 all the way to 2011. Bandai was the first one to launch a Naruto game. Naruto Konoha Ninpocho for the WonderSwan Color, which was also a Bandai console, which was only released in Japan. This was a traditional RPG with a turn-based battle system, something that was quite easy to develop and release as soon as possible, because more often than not, if you're the first company to market, then you'll be successful, and Bandai definitely wanted to be the first one to release a Naruto game. Unfortunately, that wasn't enough for Bandai to find success, as that was the only game of that series to ever be released, and it ended up being the only Naruto game on the WonderSwan Color, a console which Bandai discontinued later that year because it simply could not compete with the Game Boy Advance. But only a month after Konoha Ninpocho, Tomy was about to release a game that would put them on the Naruto map forever. Naruto Gekto Ninja Taisen, which would later become known in the West as Naruto Clash of Ninja for the Nintendo GameCube. Tomy was the first one to release a game for the big boy consoles, while Bandai was focused on releasing one for their handheld. But you could argue that both games were rushed. Clash of Ninja, despite being a more traditional fighting game, more action-oriented like Naruto fans wish for, as a fighting game it had a very small roster with only 8 characters and a lack of depth in mechanics that made it easy to learn, but not that fun to play over long periods of time. Still, the Nintendo GameCube was now Tomy's platform, and they didn't stop there. Just a month later, Tomy launched another series that would become pretty popular on handheld consoles. Naruto Saikyo Ninja Daikeshu for the Game Boy Advance, which would later in the West become known as the Ninja Council series. Even on this handheld console, Tomy kept their focus on the action, making a side-scrolling brawler with a few of your favorite Naruto characters. You could tell some parts of this game were also rushed because you actually repeat the same level twice, just with a different boss fight at the end, before you're able to move on to a different level. Bandai tried to compete by releasing a game on the original PlayStation, and this was 2003, the PlayStation 2 had already been released. But since this was just a board game, kinda like Monopoly, it ended up being a flop. This one was actually developed by Dimps, who you might know from Dragon Ball Xenoverse. Yeah, they used to make stuff like this. Bandai wasn't the only one struggling. Tomy also had a few bumps in the road, releasing a pretty bad turn-based strategy game for the Game Boy Advance, probably given the recent success of Advance Wars in that platform. Tomy thought they could captivate that audience, as well as the Naruto audience, and they were wrong, because at this point Naruto fans had already shown a bias towards action games. And in October of 2003, in partnership with CyberConnect 2, Bandai releases their biggest Naruto investment to date, Naruto Narutime Hero for the PlayStation 2, which would become known as the Ultimate Ninja series here in the West. Not at all similar to Tomy's Clash of Ninja series, which you could compare to something like a Virtua Fighter. This one was rather unique and made good use of the Naruto license. It was mechanically easy to grasp, but with its fast pace and a lot of options on how to attack your opponent, despite its limited roster and a small number of maps, it quickly became the fan favorite. To fight Ultimate Ninja's success, Tomy was very quick to put out their second Clash of Ninja game. While they didn't necessarily expand on the fighting system, they did increase the roster to 20 characters and added a 4-player multiplayer mode. And in the grand scope of the history of Naruto games, we're only getting started. Just to give you guys some perspective, this was only the first year of Naruto games. 2003 saw 7 Naruto games released, 3 from Bandai and 4 from Tomy, with Tomy dominating the Nintendo platforms with their games on the GameCube and Game Boy Advance, and Bandai with 1 game on their now defunct WonderSwan Color and Sony's PlayStation 1 and 2. The fight continued in 2004, where Tomy released not only a sequel to their Ninja Council game on Game Boy Advance, where they had absolutely no competition from Bandai, so they also decided to keep on betting on that handheld market, releasing their first Naruto RPG also on Game Boy Advance, which would later become known in the West as the Path of Ninja games. This game was a higher quality product than Bandai had first released with Konoha Ninpocho, a true JRPG retelling the story of Naruto, with some depth to its battle system with different characters you could pair up in a party and align them for different bonuses. But 2004 also saw a sequel to Bandai's newfound popular franchise, Naruto Hero 2, which blew up in sales, solidified Bandai's position as a bona fide Naruto game maker. This game really went out of its way to address criticism and add new content. They went from 12 characters in the first game to 32 characters. Their story mode added some mini games as well as free roaming, something no one had done in a 3D Naruto game to date. It also allowed you to customize the characters you pick by equipping them with different jutsu before heading into battle. And they also added a ton of maps and just a lot of new content. And just like the previous year, Tomy responded by releasing a new Clash of Ninja. Gekto Ninja Taisen 3 tried changing the formula a bit. Looking at the success of Ultimate Ninja and the hype behind ultimate attacks and transformations, this game gave you the chance to change forms during combat, like Naruto entering QB mode for instance, as well as introducing team special attacks in tag team mode. But at this point, Tomy was falling behind. They were playing catch up with Bandai and the features their fans loved. Not to mention, the PlayStation 2 sales were skyrocketing, and since Tomy was releasing their games with Nintendo, they might not have picked the best partner for this race. On the handheld side though, Tomy still reigned supreme with no competition. Nintendo launched the DS, and with it, Tomy made the transition for both their series. Ninja Council 3 and Naruto RPG 2 both made it to the DS in 2005. The games didn't change that much, despite the change of platform, but they did make use of the touchpad and added a lot of playable characters to both games. Smelling the blood in the water, Bandai doubled their efforts to solidify their position with the PlayStation 2 and started the new Naruto series, Naruto Uzumaki Ninden, which later became known in the West as Uzumaki Chronicles. The free roaming of Ultimate Ninja 2 proved to be popular, so Bandai focused this game on that aspect. This was a 3D game where you could explore the Konoha village and surrounding territories, with the freedom that players wanted. As far as combat went, it was rather shallow, but Bandai quickly learned what made Naruto fans happy: free roaming, graphics, and the latest characters from the show, which is why, even to this day, the Naruto community is very split about whether or not these games were any good. Because gameplay-wise, they don't feel great. It doesn't help that they haven't aged well, but the game did let you explore the world in a way that not a lot of other games did, certainly not at the time. But September of 2005 saw an even bigger event happening in the world of Naruto. The Naruto anime would premiere in Western territories for the very first time, fully dubbed in English, and the Naruto phenomenon was about to explode. As the first episode of Naruto aired in Western territories, Bandai was going through a big change in their company. Motivated by higher development costs and lower trending prices, the company merged with video game publisher Namco. With this merger, the company expanded in America, and this couldn't have happened at a better time because the West was about to be very hungry for Naruto games. But Tomy was actually the first to market here in the West, releasing their first Clash of Ninja and their first Ninja Council games, both in North America and Europe, with the help of Nintendo's publishing power. This happened at the same time as they were releasing new games for their existing series in Japan. Gekto Ninja Taisen 4 and Saikyo Ninja Daikeshu 4 were also coming out for the GameCube and Nintendo DS respectively, making it so that Japan was 3 games ahead of us here in the West. We were getting outdated games, but beggars can't be choosers. Those were all the Naruto games we were getting. Bandai Namco was still competing with their Naruto Hero series on PlayStation 2, and this was when they launched their biggest game to date in Japan, Naruto Hero 3, which to this day is still an all-time fan favorite. So far, we've seen Tomy going uncontested in the handheld market, releasing games for the Game Boy Advance first and then the Nintendo DS with no competition from Bandai. But that was also about to change, now that Sony were launching their own handheld platform. The launch of the PSP put Bandai in the handheld market for Naruto games, and their first PSP game came out in March of 2006, a spin-off of their Ultimate Ninja series that would become known in the West as the Ultimate Ninja Heroes series. A game with a combat system very inspired by the Ultimate Ninja games, which seemed the dream for any Naruto fan. So far, all we had seen in portable consoles were games from Tomy, which were either brawlers or RPGs that seemed limited by the platform's hardware. No one knew at the time that an action fighting game like this was possible in a handheld console, and suddenly, Tomy was not alone in the handheld market. Looking to survive in this increasingly competitive world of business, Tomy merged with one of Japan's largest toy makers, Takara. Takara had just recently lost their capital alliance with Konami, so both companies looked looking to solidify their position in the market, joined forces, but never became as large as Bandai Namco, who was about to debut in the West in June of 2006 with their first Ultimate Ninja game for the PlayStation 2, and what a success it was. Not much would change until the end of the year. Both companies continued to release their flagship series in Japan, Tomy with Naruto RPG 3, and Bandai with Naruto Konoha Spirits, which would later become known as Uzumaki Chronicles 2. As they continued to release new games in Japan, their old games kept on being re-released in the West, as the English anime caught up with the stories told within their games. After the first Clash of Ninja and Ninja Council games, Tomy released the second Clash of Ninja and the second Ninja Council on the same year, while Bandai brought Uzumaki Chronicles to the English crowd. In December of 2006, it was Tomy who tried something new, Naruto Shinobi Retsuden, which later came to the West as Naruto Ninja Destiny. Just like Bandai launched a handheld fighting game with Ultimate Ninja Heroes, this was Tomy's handheld alternative to their Clash of Ninja series. However, critically, this game was not a success. The story mode was extremely short, you could beat it in less than an hour, and the roster only had 16 characters, which at this point was considered to be a pretty small roster. But with a battle mode and a wireless battle mode, it showed that Tomy could also do fighting games on a portable console. They just needed a little shove from Bandai first. 2007 was going to be a big year for both companies. Not only had the PlayStation 3 and Wii launched at the tail end of 2006, but the Naruto anime was also about to have a big jump. February of 2007 gave us the first episode of Naruto Shippuden, after months of mind-numbing fillers that nearly cost the show's popularity and reputation. Shippuden brought a newfound hype to the Naruto community. So now Tomy and Bandai were back in the race to release new Naruto games using characters and plot from the Shippuden arc. Tomy adopted the Nintendo Wii right away, as it was one of the fastest selling consoles at the time, and you could argue that Bandai Namco was only ahead of Tomy purely because of the sheer numbers that the PlayStation 2 console had sold compared to the GameCube. So, shifting over to the Wii, Tomy released Naruto Shippuden Gekto Ninja Taisen EX, a game that replaced the cast of characters from previous Clash of Ninja games with Shippuden versions of those characters. Besides a change of roster and platform, there wasn't much new to this game, something that wouldn't change until later that same year with Naruto Shippuden Gekto Ninja Taisen EX2, which introduced stage hazards called danger zones that could harm the player who touched them, and also introducing a new hand seal mechanic which could raise the player's attack power or chakra, and for some characters it could even trigger an in-game transformation. But Bandai Namco was also suffering from creative input, as they launched Naruto Shippuden Naruto Axeru for the PlayStation 2. Bandai Namco wouldn't transition into the PlayStation 3 until the console was 2 years old. Maybe because the PlayStation 2 was still very popular, or maybe because the PlayStation 3 was not the easiest platform to develop games for. The progression that Ultimate Ninja series saw up to this point had seemingly stopped. Now Bandai Namco had but a few minor changes to the gameplay and expanded the roster. The biggest innovation in Naruto Axeru was the revamping of story mode, which gave players a really big world to explore, but this world was mostly empty. And unlike Tomy, who actually innovated with Gekto Ninja Taisen EX2, Bandai's second game that year, Naruto Axeru 2, didn't see many improvements. The game had the biggest roster to date with 62 characters. It introduced body assists, which carried over to the Storm series later, but every update to this game was pretty minor. The Ultimate Ninja series was clearly dying at this point, and Bandai Namco had no idea what to do with it. Regardless, 2007 was still a big year for Naruto games, both in Japan and the West. Tomy released Saikyo Ninja Daikeshu 5, transitioning the Ninja Council series to Naruto Shippuden as well, and at the same time, they brought Naruto Ninja Council 3 as well as their Naruto RPG series to the West, which is known here as Naruto Path of the Ninja. They also released Gekto Taisen 3, which was original in the GameCube, as Naruto Clash of Ninja Revolution in the West for the Wii. With this change of platform, they allowed you to play this fighting game with a nunchuck, which went about as well as you think it did, and this version actually lost some characters from the original game. On the Bandai Namco side of things, they brought over the remaining series they had in Japan, with Ultimate Ninja 2 and Uzumaki Chronicles 2 both arriving at the PlayStation 2 in the West. They also brought over Ultimate Ninja Heroes on the PSP, but it wasn't exactly the same game they had released in Japan. Story mode was actually cut out from the game, as well as some characters, to prevent spoilers from scenes that hadn't been shown in the English dub version of the anime. To make up for this, they gave you a 3v3 combat system where you would pick 3 characters, but then you would only fight with one at a time. Despite this its attempt at innovation, this didn't stop players from rightfully complaining about the content that had been cut out. After all, not everyone was following the English dub version of the anime, a lot of people were following the original Japanese release, and getting all these outdated games was getting pretty frustrating at this point. Before 2007 ended, we would see a new player enter the race. Even if it was for a short period of time, their presence raised the stakes. And now the fight was no longer exclusive to Tomy versus Bandai, as Ubisoft was also releasing a Naruto game. That's right. 2007, Ubisoft was tackling this franchise and bringing it into a console that had not seen a single Naruto game yet, the Xbox 360. Naruto Rise of a Ninja brought a more westernized game, a more traditional AAA adventure that surprisingly enough we hadn't seen in a Naruto game to date. Throughout all of these years and different concepts, Ubisoft was able to make something new out of this license, while retelling the same Naruto story we had seen time and time again. And while the game wasn't exactly perfect, it showed potential, and its sales made the Xbox 360 a platform that Japanese developers dismissed and large, something to keep an eye out for. 2008 saw a lot of Naruto games, but not that many surprises. Tomy opened the year with Naruto Shippuden, Dairansen Kagebunshin Emaki, an experiment gone very wrong. This was an RPG brawler that was very outdated even at the time, and it ended up never leaving Japan and Korea. The rest of Tomy's year was made up of sequels to their games and ports to the West, with Shinobi Retsuden 2 giving us a longer story mode and 34 playable characters, finally making good on the promise of a portable fighting game on the Nintendo DS. The last game of the Ninja console series came out in Japan, Naruto Shippuden Saikyo Ninja Daikeshu Gekitotsu Naruto vs Sasuke. This last Ninja console game came and went without making much of an impact, and it's probably why the series was discontinued. They also made Gekitou Ninja Taisen EX3 on the Wii with a new game mode called Hurricane Clash, where players would take on hordes of enemy ninja, giving you something to do other than just dueling other ninja in the game. The West was still catching up with the games and the anime, which was frustrating for those of us following the Japanese anime, something that became more mainstream over time, and critics started hitting those games hard for purposefully cutting out content to prevent spoilers of characters or scenes that hadn't shown in the English dub version yet. This was especially aggravated with Tomy's games in 2008. To the West, they brought the first Ninja Destiny and the second Path of Ninja games, and while no one complained about those, people were not happy with Clash of Ninja Revolution 2. Because the anime hadn't shown a few characters, they changed the story completely. And the story they made up was some of the worst filler ever seen in Naruto.
If I defeat you, I can eat all the meat I could ever dream of.
Tomy had announced this game was going to have online multiplayer, which ended up being scrapped from the game because the developers needed more time to flesh out the story. And since the story didn't deliver, the Clash of Ninja reputation hit an all-time low. Tomy's flagship franchise had suffered an almost lethal blow here in the West. The other handheld Naruto series were following a confusing path as well. Ultimate Ninja Heroes 2 was released in the West, but it was actually the first game we had already seen in Japan. Saikyo Ninja Daikeshu 3 was released as Ninja Council 2 European version, and this idea that the Western world lived with no knowledge of what was going on in Japan made Tomy's game series very confusing for anyone trying to follow any of it. Tomy's reputation was getting dragged through the mud, but on the home consoles, their competition was thriving. Bandai Namco was releasing Ultimate Ninja 3 in the West, arguably their best game in the series, and Ubisoft also released an awesome Naruto game. Broken Bond made good on a lot of what the first Ubisoft game promised. It expanded and polished the gameplay, and suddenly everyone was making good Naruto games in 2008, except for Tomy. Before the year was over, Bandai Namco, finding a lot of success in the West, decided to develop their first PlayStation 3 game exclusively for Europe and North America. This would be the birth of the Storm series. The jump from PlayStation 2 to PlayStation 3 saw a significant improvement in the graphics department. The fighting system was completely revamped, going from a 2.5D system to full 3D stages. They brought the free roaming and exploration of Konoha back, as well as a few minigames we'd seen in the past. And it really was a turning point for Naruto games. Not only was the game a huge success in the West, for the first time ever, we had a game that Japan didn't have access to. And that didn't sit well with the Japanese market. Even though the game only covered the story up to the Sasuke rescue arc before the time skip, before Shippuden, Japan still wanted this game. So a couple of months later, Bandai Namco brought the game over to Japan. And that made them realize that the world was connected that we knew what was going on in Japan, and that Japan knew what was going on here, and that maybe the fact that the West anime hadn't caught up wasn't that big of a deal because of a little thing called the internet. And so from here on out, Bandai Namco games would be published at roughly the same time in Japan and in the West. Bandai Namco wasn't ready to give up on the PlayStation 2, however. After all, that console sold like crazy, and there were still many consumers out there buying PlayStation 2 games. So, Ultimate Ninja 4 and 5 were both ported over to the West in 2009, while Tomy doubled their efforts on the Nintendo DS, which as far as handheld consoles went, it was still more popular than the PSP. They brought Ninja Destiny 2 to the West while releasing the third one in Japan, and brought Ninja Council 4 as well, which in reality was Saikyo Ninja Daikeshu 5 in Japan, but at this point, who's really counting anymore? Bandai made another interesting move this year. They transitioned one of their PlayStation 2 series to the PSP. In an effort to compete with Tomy's dominance in the handheld market, the sequel to Uzumaki Chronicles 2 was called Naruto Shippuden Legends Akatsuki Rising, and once again, it came out exclusively in the West. Thanks to the first Storm game, Bandai saw the potential of the Western market. Unfortunately, this game felt like a step backwards for the Uzumaki Chronicles series. The change of platform created many problems for the game, namely camera controls, clunky gameplay, and a filler storyline. And in Japan, they also transitioned to the PSP with their Naruto Mate Axel series. You may remember Axel 2, which was Ultimate Ninja 5 here in the West for PlayStation 2, and now Axel 3 came out on the PSP, and only a few months later it would arrive at the West as Ultimate Ninja Heroes 3. A 50-character roster, original story and anime story modes, and a 4-player free-for-all local multiplayer. Not bad for a portable fighting game. But the final months of 2009 belonged to Takara Tomy, who was about to launch their last hurrah on the Nintendo Wii. In Japan, they launched Gekto Ninja Taisen Special, which updated the roster, added a substitution bar, and didn't really do much else. They also tried something new on the Wii, an adventure game called Ryujiki, which came to the West the following year as Dragon Blade Chronicles. The story was filler, the combat was doing the same combo over and over with a few Rasengans in the mix. It's one of the worst Naruto games of all time. But alongside it, Tomy also released one of the best Naruto games of all time, Naruto Clash of Ninja Revolution 3. This was the pinnacle of the Clash of Ninja series. 40 playable characters with online play. You could play 1v1 or 2v2 matches, with the ability to call in for partner assists. The fighting was incredibly polished, character balance was a real concern from the developers this time, and it even has a story mode which was kind of unfairly difficult, but that also made it memorable. Online play was a bit laggy, but this game even created a competitive scene around it. People would gather from all over the place to play local tournaments. That's how good this game was. But arguably, it was too late, as the Storm series had just established itself as the new king of Naruto games, and that led to Tomy giving up on home consoles, focusing their efforts on the portable console games. 2010 saw Tomy devoting their efforts exclusively to the Nintendo DS, and even though their efforts became more focused, their interest in Naruto seemed to be slowly dying. This year they would only release 2 games for the console, Naruto Shippuden Ninjutsu Zenkai Chakrash, which would come later to the West as Shinobi Rumble, a 2D fighting game with a retro style that was simply not responsive enough, which made it a bad game. And they also brought over their most recent Ninja Council game from Japan, Naruto Shippuden Naruto vs Sasuke, which once again, no one really cared about. While Bandai Namco kept on growing, on the PSP they released Naruto Shippuden Kizuna Drive, which was a sequel to Akatsuki Rising. Remember when Uzumaki Chronicles came to the PSP? That series. And Kizuna Drive would make good on that transition. It polished a lot of the gameplay with new animations and graphics. They varied up the mission design, making the game less boring than it was, and it even added local multiplayer. The transition to PSP had maybe produced the best Uzumaki Chronicles to date, but unfortunately the PSP itself was a dying console at this point, so this ended up being the final game in the series. But no need to feel sorry for Bandai, because they also released Naruto Shippuden Ultimate Ninja Storm 2, and this time they put it out on both the West and Japan at the same time, completely ignoring the the fact that the dubbed version of the anime hadn't caught up yet. Bandai learned their lesson. But that wasn't the only lesson they learned. This was no longer a PlayStation 3 exclusive game, it came out for the Xbox 360 as well, because they now saw Naruto was also popular in the United States and Europe, where the Xbox 360 actually sold some systems unlike Japan. Many people speculate that it was Ubisoft who showed them the door, with Rise of the Ninja and Broken Bond. And now, holding this Naruto license, the only ones releasing Naruto games on all the home consoles were Bandai Namco Entertainment. 2011 started with the release of a new handheld console from Nintendo, the 3DS, which could be amazing news for Takara Tomy, who was quickly losing interest in holding this license. But they decided to give it one last chance, and that chance came in the form of Naruto Shippuden 3D, the new era, released in both Japan, Europe, and Australia. But once again, Tomy had succeeded in producing one of the worst Naruto games ever made, which ended up being the last Naruto game published by Takara Tomy. The maker of amazing Clash of Ninja games ended up ruining its reputation with Naruto games by releasing poor quality products such as this one. It was a year of final games, of giving series or projects one last chance. This was also the case with Bandai Namco's Ultimate Ninja Heroes series. Naruto Shippuden Ultimate Ninja Impact was the last Naruto game on the PSP, and Bandai changed the formula significantly. They made it a brawler out of it, where you defeat multiple ninja at any given time, with a story mode that covered the anime, including some boss fights. It was a decent game to say goodbye to the PSP. But now Bandai Namco were the only company publishing Naruto games. They had no competition. They could go anywhere they wanted, so they went back to the Storm series. With Naruto Shippuden Ultimate Ninja Storm Generations, the game significantly changed the story mode, including new original animations and giving us fights from both generations of characters. They also introduced a substitution gauge, which was a crucial change in the gameplay, but sacrificing the epic boss battles in story mode was something fans weren't too fond of, so this game has received some mixed reviews. With Tomy dropping out of the Naruto game, the 3DS was now open for Bandai to publish games, and they gave it a shot with Naruto Powerful Shippuden, a game based off the spin-off series Rock Lee and his ninja pals. As such, the game shared the chibi art style with the show, giving it some charm. Gameplay was competent, but like the spin-off series, it was quickly forgotten. And that was the last Naruto game we've seen on the 3DS. Taking the criticism from Storm Generations into account, CyberConnect 2 and Bandai Namco returned stronger than ever, with Naruto Shippuden Ultimate Ninja Storm 3, which brought back story mode with epic boss battles. It gave us a huge roster and polished the gameplay, to the point that it is still the favorite Storm game for many fans. A few months later, this would become their first Storm game on the PC. Now that Bandai Namco was alone in the Naruto games market, they could take such risks, releasing games for new platforms despite Japan's constant fear of piracy. They took the chance and never went back. The Naruto games they would release afterwards would all come to the PC as well. 2013 was also the year when CyberConnect 2 and Bandai Namco released Naruto Online, a free-to-play Naruto game that you can play on your browser. Like many of these free browser games, it was, and still is, very limited, but hey, it's free and it's still alive to this day. Right after the launch of Storm 3 on PC, new consoles were arriving. The PlayStation 4 and Xbox One both launched in November of 2013. But just like the previous generation, CC2 and Bandai Namco didn't immediately jump onto the new generation. They instead released another Storm game without the traditional story mode that so many players loved. Naruto Shippuden Ultimate Ninja Storm Revolution made a lot of changes to the gameplay. Some were welcomed, others not so much. As far as story, Mecha Naruto was created by Kishimoto Masashi just for this game, and while he wasn't very popular, the original animation that was featured for other characters was very well received. But overall, this game never became the community's favorite. You may have noticed by now that the rate of Naruto games releasing has slowed down drastically. With Tomy leaving the game and Bandai focusing their games on the home consoles, we're only seeing 1, maybe 2 games a year. And 2015 was the first year since the beginning of the history of Naruto games where we didn't really see anything new. Unless, of course, you count their first attempt at a mobile game with Naruto Shinobi Collection Shippuden, released only in Japan. This is a turn-based RPG with a lot of social elements, and of course, it's riddled with microtransactions like pretty much all mobile games. You're able to choose which characters you play as, and you battle other characters or sometimes even bosses. And other than that, all we've seen of 2015 was the release of Naruto Online in the West, which had only been available in Japan to this date. And that was it. And it wouldn't be until the beginning of 2016 that we would see Naruto Storm 4. The publisher was switching platforms, advancing to the next generation, which revamped visuals, in particular facial animations, establishing Storm 4 as the game with the best anime graphics to date. It was miles above and beyond anything anyone had done so far. It also made a few changes to gameplay, namely with the leader change system, allowing you to switch characters on the fly. This brought a new meta, new strategies to the game, and it also brought the story to the end of the Naruto arc, the end of Naruto Shippuden, before the anime even got there. The Naruto universe was moving on, and so were CyberConnect 2, who announced that after developing DLC for this game, they would stop making Storm games and move on to other projects. It was one heck of a journey, from the first Ultimate Ninja on PlayStation 2, all the way to Storm 4 on PlayStation 4. There would be one more Ultimate Ninja game after Storm 4, but it wouldn't come from CyberConnect 2. Instead, it came from Gree Inc., developer of mobile games. That's right, the Ultimate Ninja series came to mobile phones with Ultimate Ninja Blazing, which was very similar to the previous mobile game, but this one actually made it to the West. In 2017, the Naruto Shippuden anime finally ended and gave birth to the first episode of Boruto, Naruto Next Generations. CyberConnect 2 promised and delivered the Storm 4 DLC, Road to Boruto, with new characters and a Boruto story mode. And also released the Storm Trilogy, which included Storm 1, 2, and 3 for the new consoles. And after that, they officially stepped away from the game. Bandai Namco would release another mobile game in Japan, which would come later to the West. Naruto X Boruto Ninja Voltage brought the mobile games to the Boruto arc, while keeping its characters from Naruto Shippuden, and changing the gameplay to a tower defense type of game, where you can set up your own fort with traps and defenses to prevent other players from invading you. And of course, you can also invade other players' forts. The mobile phones market must be proving successful to Bandai Namco, because we're currently seeing their production of mobile games ramping up significantly. Despite the huge success that was the Ultimate Ninja and Storm series, many players were unhappy with the path Bandai Namco had taken. Too many Storm games had come out in the latest years, and now players no longer had the choice between getting Storm or getting Clash of Ninja, because Storm was all there is as far as Naruto games were concerned. Plus, another Bandai Namco license had games that had severely evolved. I'm talking about Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball games had given players a much wanted feature, which was character creation. So, Bandai Namco, inspired by the success of character creation in Dragon Ball, started development with a new studio on a brand new Naruto game, Naruto to Boruto Shinobi Striker, a multiplayer-focused game that gives players the chance to create and customize their own ninja, and then use them in online battles. Many players rejoiced for this being a departure from the Storm series. Many praised the fact that they can finally create their own ninja, but many also criticized the fact that this is a multiplayer-focused game with no story mode. Something that the Storm games had perfected over the last years was now a feature missed in Shinobi Striker. As for the quality of the actual game, well, that's a story for another time, because as of the recording of this video, the game isn't out yet, but early next year, the history of Naruto games will continue. Thank you for watching the complete history and evolution of Naruto games. This video was a ton of work, so if you can throw me a thumbs up, that would be highly appreciated. We've got a lot of other videos on anime games, so if you're new to the channel, check out some of our other work by clicking the videos on the screen. And also subscribe if you want to see more videos in the future. My name's Globku, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!